I'm supposed to be there somewhere. There we are. Good morning from Mirador Television. I think perhaps the next step is to do a little bit something about the lighting. Much as it's atmospheric, and because this is a very, very old hotel, it does actually stop some features being seen. Not least of which mine. Who wants to watch that? I'm Keith Hayes, and this is Mirador Television, broadcasting out of the White Hart. Now, each Monday, there will be me and Suzanne Mouchot. I don't know whether Suzanne is standing by in New York today, but we're going to try and contact her once we're actually underway. It is now 8:37, and hopefully we might just get Suzanne. We might, but in New York, it's pretty damn early. It is 8. Let's see, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, or coming up to it, and it's only a labor of love that enables anybody to join us at this hour, but we'll give it a try, because she is a joy. Believe me, she is a joy, and she is going to appear regularly each Monday with us on Mirador. So we will do our best to get hold of Suzanne and hear what's going on in New York. But for the moment, we will take a look at the newspaper front pages, and it's not a pretty picture. Not a pretty picture at all. And we'll look at that picture in a moment. There we are. Well, we've done our best, and what we will now do is talk to you from the White Hart in Lewis. And the very first thing that we do, of course, is we take a break, because I always like, on a very, very nice day, and it is a very, very nice day out there, it's like to go down to one of our parks, the Southover Grange Park, and just enjoy, just for 60 seconds, the lovely surroundings. Well, there we are. That's a start, taking us down to the park and to get the sleep out of your eyes. And with any luck, we will go to New York and we'll bring in Suzanne. But let's take a look at the news headlines, first of all. We've got two gentlemen here who I hope you weren't coming in for a drink. It's a bit early.
Well, we are coming in for a drink. It's never too early for a drink.
No, you're quite right. Whether, in fact, you can get service or not is another question.
Well, I'm going to ask the question. And that is the question.
Well, I'll tell you.
Where is it?
Let me tell you that there's a lovely lady. Her name is Shannon at the front desk. She's beautiful. She'll give you a lovely smile. And if you're able to have a drink, she's the lady to contact.
Thank you very much. Good man.
Shannon.
Cheers.
Yeah, I know Shannon. She's a good mate of mine.
Right. Okay. There we go. We've given good guidance to some gentlemen. I believe they were in the other day. I think they were in for a wedding on the weekend. But there we are. That's what this program is all about, is whatever happens, happens. And God bless it. Now, the newspaper headlines. The Prime Minister is warned over Northern Ireland plans and the death of a Ukraine hero. Well, the Financial Times is the first paper. There we go. Suzanne is ready. So let's tell her that we are waiting for her to come in from New York. Yeah. It is each Monday you're going to be treated to, instead of the ugly old bugger flapping around, you're going to be treated to the delightful Suzanne Mouchot, who is a lovely lady in New York. She is an architect by profession and the head of a very prestigious school of architecture in New York City. But she is also a great commentator. She is further a great mother, and she has a wonderful she said she'll join us in 15 minutes, which is great by me. Except what I've done now is I've lost the papers, but we will get them back in a moment. He said with some hope. There we are. We have the papers in front of us, the Financial Times is the choice of the other media this morning, because it highlights the fact that Boris is under fire again. You know, one of the things I'm beginning to become a fan of Boris. The reason being is that politicians are so used to doing nothing. There is a famous line in a docudrama about Bobby and John Kennedy when they are facing the massed protesters on the front lawn of the White House. And John JFK says to Bobby, "Jesus, Bobby, what do we do now?" And Bobby famously says, "What we always do, Jack, nothing." And that really quite often is the strategy used by politicians, is if we do nothing long enough, people will forget about it. And away we go, which actually is now turning out, because of the speed of life, and not to be such a good strategy after all. Basically, what we are looking at here, I think, is that Boris is getting himself into a lot of hot water. And why? Because he's trying to do something. And who are the people who are getting him into hot water? Is his supposed allies, who are scared silly that he is doing something. The trouble is that they are in a period where the status quo, leaving it be, is not an option. And when are they going to learn that? Right or wrong, I would much rather have a government that gets it totally wrong by doing things than a government that can never get anything right because they do nothing. So Boris is getting his own party on his back, and some of these daft people who are so busy playing politics, they've lost track of what's happening in our society. Food shortages, energy prices, you name it, we've got it, including a war in Ukraine. So what is exercising the minds of the media this morning who watch these things? Well, the Financial Times is planned changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol. Boris Johnson is set to publish a bill that will rip up the plans agreed with the EU. And the FT says it has led to accusations from some Tory MPs he is damaging the UK and everything Conservatives stand for. I don't see how that jives with everything the Conservatives stands for. What he's trying to do is to make it easier for us to deal with Northern Ireland, which is part of our territory, and also for Northern Ireland to get a fair crack at the whip, which it's not getting because to the south and to this artificial border is a member of the EU. So how they argue that, I have no idea. Having said that, the one thing that I hate is arguing with the politician, debating with the politician, and mainly because they are very good at debating. Not much good at anything else, but they are very good at debating. And so what we have to do is to be very careful how we approach them. But to me, I would like to hear their argument as to why they want Boris to do nothing. Pa-boom, 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 pa-boom. The Guardian: overriding Northern Irish deal will damage UK investment, warns the CBI. Well, with all due respect to the CBI, but it hasn't got much right in the last 10 years. It's an organization that says it represents British industry. But to me, it's become a funny talking shop that it just criticizes anything that's happening and does not bring forward a great deal of initiative or suggestions as to how we should handle things. So overriding the Northern Irish deal will damage UK investment. That's what the CBI says, the Confederation of the British Industry. What the CBI is saying is that campaigners will think again about investing in Britain and dragging down the economy. The Director General, somebody called Tony Danker, says global firms are thinking it might not be the time to invest in UK right now. Well, I would have thought that they are looking for investments all over the place because it's not the time to invest anywhere. So I would think that we are actually, strangely enough, the lesser of several evils. We are geared to trade, to industry. We are, at the moment, a private enterprise thinking country. Now is the time to put money in. If this issue with Northern Ireland is going to block it, then what I say is unblock it, not decide that we will just go along and salute the European Union. So yes, that's perfectly okay. The Daily Telegraph: European judges to be stripped of protocol powers. And what it says is that this is a story about the Northern Ireland Protocol, but on the expectations, the Prime Minister will aim to stop European judges from having the final say on the Northern Ireland deal. It reports that this is the paper, it reports that the proposed bill will remove the oversight of the European Court of Justice and instead hand the final judgment to British courts. The paper says the move is a tactic to get the EU back to the negotiating table rather than spark an immediate trade war. Well, if indeed it is a tactic, I think it's not a bad one. Get everybody so bloody angry that talking is the last thing that we have to do. Now the Daily Mail returns to the issue of us being invaded by hundreds of refugees a day coming to us from France on creaky little boats, on dinghies, on almost paddle boards, to get to what is considered to be the Garden of Eden, as far as we are concerned with the present situation for refugees. This is the place to be because you get the best deals here. I'm not sure that that's a good strategy, but nonetheless, it's not one that I'm willing to argue with. If we're a place that we'd like to be, is fine, but you have to do it legally. Otherwise, we need to look at situations and say, if people aren't going to deal with this legally, we'll deal with it illegally. Now, the Mirror also, the Mail also says Prince Andrew has asked for his royal status back and to be a Grenadier Guards colonel again. But the understanding is that Charles is far from happy with that and has recommended to his mother, don't fall for it. Keep him at arm's length. He's toxic. And I have to say that one of the things that is said about Andrew is that he is the spoiled one of the royal family. He gets whatever he wants and then is a bit cavalier in the way that he treats it. The Mirror. 1 million kids to go hungry, they say. And that is because school meals have been curtailed. Not to everybody, but there are a lot of people that will not get school meals, not at the moment anyway. So the Mirror is saying, oh dear, but that means that some children will starve, and that there are 1 million of them. Is that true? Who knows? The fact of the matter is it's become an issue about who will go hungry and who won't. We'll go to the Times and so on in a little while, because first of all, we're expecting Suzanne to join us. So let's just then look at one of our programs from the past. Well, what should we do here? Let's the council first, because I always feel like on a Monday morning having a go at the council. Let's see what we had to say a couple of years or so ago. Come on in. Come on in to East Sussex. The countryside is fabulous. Come on in to East Sussex. Come on in. The life is wondrous. Come on in. Come on in to East Sussex. There's room for all. Stop! We didn't mean the elderly. We didn't mean the lame. We didn't mean the sick. Oh dear me, no. The elderly want bus passes. After all, bus passes allow old people freedom. They can shop for themselves. They can get out of their homes.
They can socialize, meet people, escape loneliness. None of that nonsense in East Sussex. We plan to axe the bus pass. Like to read? Oh dear, East Sussex isn't the place for you. The council plan is to charge for library services. Who reads nowadays anyway? A lot of politicians don't. Encourage reading? Oh dear me, no. Those who need help with transport to school aren't welcome. We plan to cut those costs. Waste recycling? We're all for that. But we can't keep the waste sites going for free. We plan to charge for entrance. All this is necessary, you see, to keep East Sussex as a welcome place to enter. Cut services to the old people, the lame and the sick. We just can't afford that. Come on in, though, to East Sussex. We can afford to pay our senior county council executives more than £1 million. We can also afford to pay almost the same amount for top executives in the district councils. Come on in. East Sussex is wonderful. Alright, now steady on. Democracy is flourishing. The councils have asked us, the people, what we think of these plans. Okay, they haven't listened in the past. But perhaps this time...
Well. Have we actually been a bit naughty about that? And in fact, that was a stance that was taken about 2 years ago, just before lockdown. Those were the issues then, but some of them have not gone away. And the lame, the sick, and the elderly are not treated at all well. And add to that the mentally stressed, mentally challenged, however we want to phrase that nowadays, and also the people who are homeless, we discourage them. What we are looking for is people who are wealthy enough to pay over the odds for houses which they may or may not live in when they're here. That's what we're basically looking for. But now there is a referendum taking place. I'm not sure whether it's today or tomorrow, but in one little seaside town called Whitby. I've never been to Whitby, but I feel that I know it because it's a town that features in the wonderful, the excellent television series, which is being replayed, called Heartbeat. And if you've never seen Heartbeat, tune into it. A wonderful set of characters in an English Yorkshire village, fictional, but nonetheless surrounds the policeman and the nurse and the pub. And all in all, it's a very, very good series. But this little fictional village, whenever they need to go into a town, is they always go into Whitby. And Whitby apparently is pricing itself out of the market. And that at long last, somebody is doing something about it. And that's a report that I don't have in front of me and isn't in the papers this morning. But it's one that is supposedly being tried by those in Whitby who say enough is enough. All these houses are up for sale. Fantastic. But it's people cashing in. And basically locals aren't able to buy them. I am not absolutely sure that we the encouragement for people to buy their own houses is get on the property ladder is such a wise one anyway. But that's for another day. I think that this whole ambition, which started with Margaret Thatcher, is own your own home. It has much benefit over don't own your own home. So I am very key in looking at this particular issue. Now, da-da, wonderful. There she is. Look at that. It must be 5 o'clock in the morning. She's beautiful, gorgeous, and bouncing with life.
It's actually 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Yes.
I feel as if I can go back to bed now. It is 8. It's 9 o'clock here. Goodness gracious me. Well, we have been working here since 7 o'clock this morning, so I don't feel too badly.
Yeah,
So,
impressive.
What's the weather like, first of all, Suzanne? And you are in New York?
I am in New York. I am I'm actually not too far from the Empire State Building. That's where I live. So just a few blocks east of the Empire State Building, right on the East River. The weather's great. The weather's been beautiful. Saturday, I went to my daughter's orientation at college. It was a gorgeous day. It's like 75, 80 or so, nice and sunny. So it's good.
Yeah. Now, how old is your daughter?
My oldest daughter is 17, so I have 3 kids. So
Right. Okay. Now tell us what an orientation is, because it's a term that would be unfamiliar here, and the whole idea for us with having you and on a Friday having our other colleague Melissa is to see whether we can try to understand a little better how each of us live. Because you and I have shared this before, but Churchill said, 2 great nations separated by a common language.
That's right. That's right.
And we don't always mean the same thing when we use the same words. So tell us a little bit about what your daughter went through. And is this a leaving situation? Will she now go to college, or will she go back to school next year? Or give us a brief rundown.
Yeah, sure. So she's finishing her senior year in high school. She graduates on Friday. She applied to 19 colleges. She got into about 15 of them or so.
Wow.
Yeah, and she chose a college called Marist College. It's in a town called Poughkeepsie, which is about 2 hours from Manhattan. And orientation was basically a whole bunch of mothers crying and a whole bunch of kids all excited that they're leaving for school. And I was no different. I was like unusually overcome with emotion. So, but it's good. She'll be living there. So, but it's 2 hours away. So if she needs us, we can quickly run up there. So.
Right. Now, do they throw their mortarboards into the air at the end of this thing?
At the end of 4 years, yeah. If we're lucky, hopefully she'll graduate in 4 years, or maybe she'll stay for a master's degree. Who knows? But yes, they throw it up in the air. Well, they first turn the tassel, and then they throw it up in the air. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. We don't do anything like that as demonstrative here. We are still very, very conservative about these things.
Well, that's what Americans are like. We're just a bunch of, we hold our hearts on our sleeves, right? Isn't that what they say?
Oh, but I mean, I'm beginning to think that tradition is more in America than it is here now, because we seem to be in the grip of a group of people who want to break down tradition, and how sad that is.
Yeah, well, you'll laugh at this. I met another father, or my husband was there too, but I met a father. We had lunch with him, and we were talking about living in Seattle because I've recently been to Seattle and it's so beautiful. And he had lived there for 10 years. So I said, "Oh, it's so gorgeous." And he said, "Well," he said, everything here in New York and in this area, everything is so old. There's this rich, long history." And he said, "But in Seattle, everything's like brand new. It just got settled, like 60, 70 years ago." And I knew I was doing today. I'm like, boy, he thinks we're old. There's like lots of other places that have a much longer history. So.
Well, now you surprise me that you would say Seattle is beautiful. That part of the world, the coast along there, is indeed quite wonderful. But Seattle itself always seemed to me to have been lost because they built freeways 30 years ago, and they built them right through the center of the town. So actually what you see when you're in the middle of Seattle is a whole bunch of pilings keeping the roads up above the city. So Seattle, I mean, many times I've been to Seattle because I lived in Vancouver, and because Boeing is in Seattle, they had a very flourishing rugby scene. And we would many times go down to play rugby and quaff a few beers and sing naughty songs. So Seattle, I like in that sense, but it's never struck me as being a beautiful city.
Yeah, I would say that it also has that issue where do you put the road? Let's put it on the river and let's put it on the water or whatever. In New York, it's the river, and Seattle, it's the lakes and on the ocean. And it is a shame. But what I will say about Seattle is that the views beyond, I mean, it's like, there's mountains, like incredible mountain ranges that are just off in the distance, these snow-capped mountains. And the water is just like, it changes. The water in Seattle seems to change its character like every 5 minutes. It looks different every 5 minutes. And I have a really good friend who lives there. So I went down there. Well, I was in Vancouver for work. And I ended up taking a bus from Vancouver to Seattle. And then I spent one night in Seattle and had dinner with my friends. And before I could meet with him, I went and had a drink at a restaurant right on the water. This really delicious restaurant. I think it was called Heirloom, and it was spelled Aerlume. Anyway, I was all alone. There's nobody else there. I was sitting outside, great view of the water and all of the mountains, had this delicious glass of wine. And then my friend picked me up, and then he drove me to where he lives. He lives in Edmonds, which is about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes outside of the city. And that was even more beautiful. I mean, it was stunning. That was stunning. I mean, the water and the mountains and the air and all of the amazing flora and fauna there. I mean, they have all their own kinds of trees and plants and things that we don't have here in the Northeast. So I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, Mount Baker, as I recall, is the main
Yes.
feature. Yeah, a quite stunning mountain, actually.
Yes, no, it's completely stunning. And then, of course, they have all well-situated sailboats just flying through or floating through.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, very, very much a waterway.
Yes.
And in fact, as I recall again, there is a ferry service from Seattle to Victoria on Vancouver Island, which is actually in Canada. In fact, Victoria is the capital of British Columbia, and that there is a tremendous ferry service and demand for it of people going backwards and forwards between the two cities.
Yeah, I should do that next time. The bus was not exactly, something to write home about. However, it was quick and fast, and you went through customs quite easily, so that was nice. But it was. I would love to take the ferry, and I would love to take the train. Although the train is still closed because they had landslides about 8 months ago, and they haven't fixed that yet. So yeah. So
of course, things change over the years. So I doubt if I would recognize it. I think it's about 4 years since I was actually back in Vancouver. And even then I wasn't in Vancouver. I was in Victoria, which, as they say, is for the newlywed and the nearly dead.
Oh no, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that. Well, you have to come. You have to come visit. When you go, I'll go.
Very well. Now that's a date.
All right.
Right, Suzanne. Let's turn to one or two serious things now.
Okay.
One of the issues in the Times newspaper this morning is that universities are facing a new China cash crackdown, and basically the story is that the top universities here are funded a great deal by the Republic of China for various projects, and they don't have to declare anything to say where it comes from, over £75,000. And of course, some of these endowments are millions. But the fear now being expressed is, particularly with the sensitivity of the international scene, is that the Chinese are buying our universities. Now, first of all, does that strike any sort of chord with you, being very heavily involved with universities? And second, do you have any similar situation in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, so the university situation in the United States has changed so drastically because of COVID. Prior to, well, actually, it's almost even prior to COVID. We had a lot of immigration changes when Trump was president, and he didn't allow the same types of immigration even for education. So there was kind of already a shift, and then once we had the pandemic began, then of course the students couldn't get here. I mean, I'm sure we're no different from Britain in that sense. And so universities couldn't really rely on international students to help bolster their enrollment and bolster their tuition. And a lot of the universities in the United States are actually solely tuition based. So they actually exist solely on tuition. So their endowments aren't that large to be able to take you through more than 1 year, even if that much, you know. So that was a big shift with our relationship with international countries, and then particularly China, because China obviously had and has its own sort of brand of methodology about whom they allow to come here, and this is, I'm sure, true with Britain as well, and when, you know, they have very tight kind of controls on that. Now, in reference to just downright kind of donations to endowments, donations to research, there is no doubt that there is a lot of investment in China in research in the United States universities, and not just our universities, our research centers, our major research companies. There's definitely investment. And I do think that those now questions are being asked, should we be making those kinds of relationships? And how do they truly help the country? Because at some point we have to kind of face that China does have some really dubious kind of policies on human rights. And at some point we're going to have to ask those questions. What do you think is going to happen in Britain?
Well, I had a fascinating guest on Friday, a guy called Ian Williams, who is a noted journalist and who spent a lot of time in Russia, but also a lot of time in China and Southeast Asia. And he has written a book talking about the technology takeover in China under Xi, and that this is really, first of all, subverting their society on behalf of technical know-how, but that as a result, they are very, very good at hoovering up, as he put it, hoovering up all sorts of technology from all of us in the West, and without us realizing it. Yeah. I mean, that to me is a bit frightening. And when I started to talk to him, suddenly it went ping, yes, and I can see that his concern is one that I should be sharing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the things to be aware of with other countries that maybe have those same kinds of dubious policies is that, they play different rules. And so while Britain and the United States have probably very similar capabilities, And I'm sure of that. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily putting them to use. Whereas countries that maybe care less about human rights, about privacy, about really just kind of freedom in general, that we play by a different set of rules. And my husband always says, you can't bring a butter knife to a war, and that's kind of the same kind of thing that I think we're going to be facing, if we're not already facing it. It's a big question. I even just during the pandemic, to see how China dealt with it. People couldn't leave their homes. You were given, red, yellow, green, whether or not you could leave your house. And I mean, it was just there is no issue with surveilling humans and surveilling citizens. So, but I always believe freedom and goodness will prevail regardless of where you are in the world or in the universe. So,
Yeah, you're a wonderful optimist, I have to say. Talking to you is a breath of fresh air after listening to all our politicians who are gloom and doom and finding reasons why we shouldn't do stuff instead of finding reasons why we should. But now let's, you just mentioned the word war. We're probably very aware, almost on a day-to-day basis, the escalation of the Ukraine war. What is the awareness in the States of what's going on there, and how sympathetic are the public to the opposing Russia?
Yeah, I mean, the United States is very aware. I would say that I think maybe naively we all thought that it wouldn't be going on still. I'm hoping that the whole world thought that it wouldn't be going on still. But we are extremely aware. There is still kind of nationwide dedication to helping Ukraine as much as possible. I think the last time we spoke, we talked about whether or not the Western nations were going to get involved in a different way. And I did kind of start thinking this weekend, when are we not going to allow these things to continue, and I don't know the answer to that, but I will say that there hasn't been any less interest or dedication right now in the United States to aid in the war in Ukraine, and also just an awareness that it was attacked unfairly and that it was attacked without provocation. That's another thing. Even just to believe that is important. Because there certainly have been a lot of things being done in the background to try to make the world think that otherwise, right? So fortunately, in the United States, I would say the overwhelming majority of the country believes that that we need to help. I don't know. I don't understand. Again, maybe it's my naive view of the world. I just don't understand exactly why there is this thinking that that it's okay to just completely decimate an entire country, which is what we're watching, And I'm grateful that the United States continues to help. And I saw Zelensky was actually very appreciative to Britain recently for what was provided to them, so that's good news. But again, it's just Keith, it's just so sad. Regardless, it's still sad, that that this country is disappearing.
Yeah. I mean, Ukraine had its problems. As I think I said to you, that I worked in the Lugansk area, which is now under Russian control. Be 10 years ago now, I suppose. But one of the things that I always felt was that we are not careful enough in the West about how we apply our economic policies and philosophies. We went into Ukraine, and because we were preparing it for membership of the European Union, which it is now currently applying for on a fast-track basis, the sacred cow of privatization was hurled at absolutely everything. I mean, that particular area in the Russian border, it was great industries, steel mills, coal mines, big arms factories, each under the old Soviet system, employing 50,000 people each. and suddenly they were cut back to 10,000 because privatization, obviously, the first thing is you start to look at your workforce, how you can make it more efficient and so on. But we never bothered to plan what we were going to do with the 40,000 people that were being put out of work. And there was a huge resentment amongst particularly the older people is, hey, today we had a job and tomorrow we don't. And we're told that this is very good for us and good for the country, but we're actually out of work. And one of the interesting on the ground things was that on a Saturday morning, I would go up to the market and the farmers would come in and they would try to sell all sorts of things from the farm, but things like the kittens that were born on the farm, and they brought them in to sell them, to try and make some money. And I always thought that we bungled that, giving people like Putin a chance to sort of say, "Hey, here's an opportunity." Going on from that is, first, I have to say, I thought that Joe Biden was something of a bit of a bumbling remake of the old Democratic presidents, but he seems to have come alive on the international scene. First of all, I think he gets along quite well with Zelensky, but also he's started to act as a statesman. I think that sometimes circumstances are making him a president. Now that's how I see it. What's the reality on the ground?
Well, as you know, I live in New York City. So New York City is representative of the urban philosophies in the United States, which tends to be different from the rural and less urban part of the United States. So in New York, there has always been a great investment in Joe Biden. I mean, we believe that he was the right person for the right job at the right time, And even though he has quite endearing qualities of sometimes saying things that he shouldn't, I do think that he has incredible relationships throughout the world. And of course, he has 35 years of experience in government. So he not only has international experience, he also has legislation experience, which has been really important to understand exactly how to legally make laws in the United States. So we all had a lot of hope and faith in him. So I'm glad that the world is seeing that he really is a good soul, because we were looking for a good soul as president this past time, and that's who we have. And good souls sometimes speak like incredible charismatic orators, and sometimes they don't. And so, fortunately, I would take that person over the alternative at any time. So I would say that in the United States, we all believe in him, but that there's quite a diversity of opinion in the United States. So I can't speak for the other philosophies, but I will say that there have been, since the beginning of time, the change of occupations and work, and the Industrial Revolution is a good example, the computer revolution as well. At our graduation a couple of weeks ago at the university, this gentleman named Alvy Ray Smith spoke about Moore's Law and about how things change exponentially through invention and creation. So every country has a right to change the way that they do business and the way that their economies evolve. And it does take time. It doesn't mean that another country should then jump in and try to appeal to people who feel disenfranchised for that moment, because that's the reality of the economy in the world. If we believe in capitalism, it means that people can have a job at any given time and they can pick that job. And that means that jobs change, So I understand that there's a lot of background, there's a lot of history in all of these countries, but the basic human right of being able to choose what you do every day, that should be protected wherever you are.
You were in Seattle, and in my day, Washington State was considered to be a very right-wing state, almost redneck. Because it is very rural, beautiful though it is, it's very rural, and a large farming community. And farmers tend to be very, very conservative in their view of things. Did you get any feel of what people in Washington State what their view of things is right now?
Yeah, I think it was mixed actually. While I was there, at least that I could see. So there were kind of people from both camps, and I think that that happens. It's actually less predictable. You're pointing up the fact that it actually is a little bit less predictable about where you'll see this difference in opinion, because it used to be the city centers, and it used to spread even beyond the city centers. It's not necessarily that way. And so I actually saw both sides of the camp, if you will, in Seattle, and strangely enough, Seattle was one of the locations where COVID took a really horrible turn and killed a lot of people in Seattle. And I didn't see anyone wearing a mask, in public places. So that sort of is a little bit of an indicator as well at this time. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that Seattle does have a lot of the kind of more conservative viewpoints, but you'll see those little kind of ripples of kind of less conservative thought. I guess I'll put it that way.
Just staying with Seattle, it is the home of Boeing, and probably one of the most successful airplane manufacturers anywhere in the world. And is that still, as an entity, the mainstay of the city?
Yes, I mean there are the employers, well, and as well as a lot of the tech companies too have risen up as employers. My friend actually works for Microsoft, and then strangely enough, my friend's brother-in-law is starting a company, or has started a company called Jeterra, and he's developing a jet propulsion engine for hovercraft. So he has his own company. So there's a lot of kind of, incubators in Seattle too. There's a lot of, new companies, startup companies there as well. So yes, Boeing still has a stronghold, but I would say technology is taking over too. It's moving more north because Silicon Valley is too expensive.
Now, I'm sitting in the White Hart Hotel, which is the center. In fact, there's a plaque outside which says this is the cradle of American independence, because Tom Paine, of course, you see these rafters, they actually were over his head when he was developing the rights of man. But you just mentioned hovercraft. Did you know that he also helped to invent what would have been, if he'd have done it on vehicles, land vehicles, the internal combustion engine, but he did it for boats. And started really the first motorboat, if you like, in the United States. I think with somebody like Benjamin Franklin, or a very well-known character. But the inventions of those days are quite enormous.
Wow, so fun, right? I mean, that's like any idea you came up with was new.
Absolutely. I mean, the other thing he came up with the smokeless candle, because people would go to bed and read by candle, but the fumes would actually kill them if they did it for too long. And so he said, enough of this, I like to read into the middle of the night. And he invented a candle that was smokeless and didn't have noxious fumes and didn't kill everybody.
There you go. So now we all read late into the night and don't sleep.
Yeah, that's apart from starting the American War of Independence. He just did that as a sideline.
Yeah.
Now,
Amazing.
exploring with you the American sort of environment, we are experiencing later this week a rail strike. Now, because we're so small, a rail strike paralyzes the whole of the United Kingdom, really, if it's very severe, and it looks as if it's going to be severe. We've all seen movies like On the Waterfront and so on, but indeed the suggestion that some of the trade unions in the States are mafia held and so on. How much of a problem is the action of unions and worker reaction. We never seem to hear much about it anymore. But
Yeah.
is it still strong? Is it still a vital part of the environment?
It is still strong. In fact, my university, we have union employees. All of our cleaners are union employees, and our kind of mechanics on campus. And that's in both New York City as well as on Long Island. And they still obviously bargain for their own groups. The graft that you're talking about on the waterfront is not as prevalent, for sure. I mean, things have definitely happened in the United States to stop those kinds of things, but union life is still very strong. In fact, I don't know if you heard, but Starbucks people are planning to unionize as well in certain parts of the country. So I think the union philosophy is still strong in the United States, and people still believe in unions for a lot of things. I mean, what's interesting, there's actually faculty unions in the United States. Do you have faculty unions in Britain? Yeah,
really?
no, yeah, faculty unions, yeah, where they fight for tenure and what all of that means, and it's different for each university, really. So, so the philosophy is strong. There's still a lot of belief in it, yeah. And I will say, when I was a kid, we had a bus and subway strike when I was a kid, and everybody took taxi cabs, and there was like nonstop traffic. I still remember all the cab drivers standing on their cabs dancing, "I'm making a fortune," they were all excited.
Forgive me for dipping out of sight there for a moment, but my phone, on which I've got the newspaper headlines, suddenly told me that it was about to run out of power. So I plugged it in to make sure that it's okay. We've got the information there. When it comes to trade unions, we always think of the United States really being so open market oriented that these are bit players. But you're suggesting that, in fact, they do have quite a major part to play. What is their relationship with government?
Oh, it's strong. I mean, the major unions have their lobbyists in Washington and advocating for themselves. I don't. It's a strong relationship with government. There are, I think like union contracts last a certain period, and then you go to renegotiate, and hopefully those negotiations go well, and then there is no strike. But I another union in New York City, for instance, are housekeepers, cleaners. I mean, there are, and they have a very strong influence on the economy, and how those contracts end up shaking out, and how many people there are in each role. What's the appropriate expectation for the amount of people to do a certain amount of work every day? I would say that perhaps in our views, because we're obviously have evolved quite a bit as an economy, the advocacy for certain groups seems to be less needed. But the reality is that those types of roles get much more bargaining power when they're negotiating together. And so, I mean, you kind of can't deny that.
Let me just turn now to we've just had not this past weekend, but the weekend before, a fabulous pomp and ceremony weekend. I think that so much was going on in the background that most of us were taken by surprise at just how big the celebrations were. They were enormous, and everybody was getting involved. It was quite remarkable. But then, of course, we have the sour part, because this morning it is Prince Andrew, who has been stripped of his royal titles, has quietly gone back to his mother and said, "Mom, I would like some of these back." And she's obviously said, "Well, okay, dear, I'll see what I can do." And Charles has, who is to be the next king, of course, has said, over my dead body. So we've got a real royal row going on. Now, first of all, does that impact on you in the States, or do you just think that it's a silly little nonsense? And B, do you have those sort of issues with presidents and your political elite?
Well, I mean, the United States always has a particular curiosity about what's happening with the royalty in Britain. I mean, I don't think we're any different from most countries. And then, of course, everyone was watching whether or not Harry and Meghan would go and what would happen and all that kind of stuff. And then it was great to see the photos of their kids of the, I guess they're also future princes, right? The little ones, what was it, George? And I mean, just adorable. I mean, it's nice to see that kind of humanity. Do we get too involved? I mean, no. I mean, as you know, we left, so we don't have to have anything to do with the monarchy. So it's not like there is much of an influence here. But and of course, there's have also been efforts to not have that kind of rule passed down. I mean, obviously yours are mostly ceremonial, but that was one of the problems with the recent presidency. I mean, this kind of heir apparent that there's, people who should be in the room purely because they were related to the president. That's not kind of how we work here. So, but obviously there's also generations of politicians, generations of government. I mean, it's a little problematic to have two Bushes as president. That was not something that is typical or something that we advocate for. And then, of course, if Hillary Clinton had won, she was in the office with her husband for 8 years, and then she would have taken over. I think that there was actually a lot of an issue with that. I think that was part of it. So, so I would say that it has no influence on us whatsoever, except like lots of curiosity. And I mean, it's obviously pretty exciting. A lot of it is exciting. But I mean, I think also that interview that Harry and Meghan did with Oprah, I mean, it just sort of put a different view on the monarchy, I think, in the whole world. I mean, which I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, I thought it was the way that they talked about the monarchy, like it's this sort of organism that lives outside of everyone,
Well, I mean, the stuff that they were complaining about is the royal family quite deliberately foster. They believe that there must be mystique. I mean, it's quite interesting, some of the lengths that the royals go to make sure that we don't know what's going on, because they believe very strongly. I mean, they say, it's a sense of duty and tradition and so on and so forth. But it's also to keep everybody sort of saying, that the monarchy is terribly important. I personally believe in a constitutional democracy. I believe that, a constitutional monarchy. I believe that we probably have got the very best system in the world in Britain of governance. It is so funny because the Queen is head of the armed forces, but she's only nominally head of state. Many other things, the judiciary, she has nothing to do with. So it is very difficult to overthrow any part of the British government because you're not quite sure which part you should overthrow first. Apart from which is the boss has command of the armed forces. So you've got to go to her and say, we want to try and overthrow you. Can we borrow your army? But I mean, they do things quite. I mean, if I can be slightly crude, if you're a journalist and you have a tape recorder or any recording equipment, you are warned not to get too close to them because the royals do not burp, right? They don't have stomach troubles, which of course defies biology. But we are given the impression that they are a sort of fairy tale characters, and that sort of thing doesn't happen to a royal. So there's that sort of fantasy. By the same token, is widely accepted that the Queen is probably the most worldly, experienced, and well-informed leader, president, if you like, anywhere in the world, because she's been there for so long. She's had so much experience, and actually, I mean, she is a sensible monarch. She's not out every night in the discos. But that's the problem with some of her children.
That's right.
Right now, you are used to nice hot weather, and today here in Lewis it is 19 degrees. Whoopee! That's marvelous. But strange enough, for the rest of the week, it's going to go to sort of 22 tomorrow, 25 on Wednesday, 27 on Thursday, and might just hit 30 on Friday. And we are totally and utterly unused to this sort of heat. Now, first of all, how do you handle heat like that? Because we are totally, I mean, we just take the weather as it comes, and we have no preparations whatsoever. So give us a little bit of advice. And if I was in New York right now, because I assume that it's well over 25 or 30 degrees in New York, what would I do to stay cool?
Well, so heat definitely takes a lot getting used to, for sure. But so does cold, for that matter. So you can kind of get your bodies used to either way, But in New York, if it's a hot day, you see everybody outside, sitting nearby fountains, being by the water. I actually, for the first time, our family joined a beach club in Atlantic Beach, which is near Long Beach, which is part of Long Island, but it's on the western end of the island. So you go to the beach and hang out and sit. We have beautiful beaches here in New York. We're really fortunate for that. And but honestly, you just sit outside and you have a iced tea. Lemonade becomes a big thing in the summertime. But here in New York, we have air conditioning, where you probably don't have air conditioning yet. So that's something that that helps too, if you go into a building and have air conditioning. But I mean, what you're talking about is probably climate change, which is something that the United States is working, as well as Britain, for that matter, working very hard to try and figure out where we fit in the world and what we can do to try and change the course. But what I would recommend, Keith, is to sit outside, have a nice lemonade with lots of ice. That's the other thing. You guys don't really use ice. You got to start using ice.
I think we are a little bit more, but you're quite right. We're not an ice nation in that sense. But to be quite serious, one of the things, it's funny how people in your profession learn as they go along. When I worked for Reuters, one of the problems that we had was we would go to interview various people in the city and so on in these brand new buildings, beautifully built, beautifully designed, wonderful in every way. But we would suddenly say, or the cameraman would say, can you switch off the air conditioning because the wine is picked up by the camera and it disturbs the interview. And there was absolute panic because nobody knew how to switch the air conditioning off. It was all done from some central room in the basement of the of this 30 or 40 story building. So I think now it's probably a little better, but that was something the architects had to learn by experience.
Yeah, no, it's definitely gotten a lot better because we now believe in being able to open the windows again. There was a period in design where it was better to not be able to open a window, and it was better to only have it completely conditioned, because then you could, obviously design it more kind of crisply if you knew exactly what fresh air you were going to provide, and then condition it, But the world is changing. I mean, we can't design that way anymore. We have to design things that are more energy efficient, where you're not constantly conditioning air. And then the other thing that's changing, even just the idea of having a different, we call it a comfort band. in the United States, in the summertime, it's okay to be about 72 degrees. In the wintertime, it's okay to be about 68 degrees, which takes a lot of energy to condition air in those different directions, depending on the season. So they're changing the comfort band to like 66 up to 74, because then obviously there's less energy needed to kind of change the temperature. So I think even explaining that, Keith, in my role, I'm like, when you come back to campus, you're going to notice that it's going to be slightly warmer than you're used to or slightly cooler than you're used to, because we have to start accepting those different temperatures, But I think that you're going to love the warm weather, Keith. I can see you out in your shorts on the beach, having that lemonade.
I'm not sure that me in shorts anymore is a sight necessarily for sore eyes.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
Suzanne, it's lovely to have you with us. And you're whenever you're able, you're going to join us every Monday.
Yes.
And we're going to let everybody know, because you are a breath of fresh air. We actually met when you started to do little vignettes for us on the various buildings in New York, and you are obviously you were in the wrong profession. You shouldn't have been an architect. You should have been a broadcaster, because you really are very, very attractive on the air, and you appeal to people. But what I would like you to do now, if you wouldn't mind, is think. Here you've got not exactly a nation, because we're very small, but you've got a large number of probably reasonably sophisticated people, because we're in the southeast of the United Kingdom, and we are a dormitory town for London, bankers and lawyers and doctors and so on and so forth, as well as a very historic area. So thinking in terms of, gosh, I wonder if they know this. What sort of things would you say that we should talk about either today or over the weeks ahead that might be of interest, that you have always had the urge to say, I wonder if they know about that in Britain?
Oh, well, there's lots of things in New York that I don't think people are aware of. Our neighborhoods, about the more kind of touristy neighborhoods, but we have like lots of spots in New York that people don't know anything about. And then the other thing that's happened in New York recently, and that was actually while we had our previous mayor, is we now have this like really diverse ferry system that never was in New York City. So I can tell you all about the ferries and where to go in the city. So that's a lot of fun. And then I would love to talk more about just what youth is doing in the United States and where they see kind of the future of the world. I'd love to talk more about sustainability. And what the United States is doing to try to be a good neighbor, because now we're all neighbors, even if there's an ocean in between. We've noticed that the world can't pretend that we don't affect each other, regardless of how far we are. So all those things. But I'd love to talk about anything. I mean, I have a terrific life here, and I'd love to make sure people know to come to New York.
Well, I mean, that's lovely. And in fact, you choose your topics. We will go through the papers here each time that you're on, but then we can switch, because one of the things that I am increasingly aware of is that the more remote a community, the less they are aware of what's happening in the rest of other parts of the world. And even sophisticated people, well-educated people, will suddenly admit that they've only got a vague idea of various areas in the world. And the United States is one of them. It's a big amorphous mass with Hollywood, with Washington and New York. And after that, what? So some of the areas that you just mentioned is we'll pencil in, and if you say to me, right, today I want to talk about sustainability, or I want to talk about neighborhoods, or our role in the world, or I mean, one of the things that I think that as a matter of fact, it's not just the United States, but is we talk about Russia. But in fact, my experience is mostly Moscow, and most people are Moscow and St. Petersburg. My experience of the United States is somewhat different because I lived in Canada, but most people is New York, Washington, and Boston. Here, it's London, possibly Glasgow, Edinburgh. But what happens in the hinterland is, and for that matter, the European continent is so different. I mean, what is true of in Hungary is not necessarily true in Greece. We've got huge differences, and I think that if we, through our chat, we can help people understand some of the things that go on, which takes them out of their perception of yeah, sure, we know the Yanks, yeah, yellow cabs.
Well,
But-
I'll tell you a little story. Last weekend, I was at. Have you ever heard of Target? It's like one of these big convenience stores. So I was in Target last week, and while I was there, an elderly woman, collapsed in the store, and her friend immediately went to her and kind of held her up, and so she was trying to keep her from falling to the ground. And then 2 other people went running over to help. So there was one gentleman, another woman. So 3 people holding this woman up. We were telling the people in the store, do you have a chair? Do you have a defibrillator? Whatever we can do. We called 911. And in the meantime, I was running to see if they had a defibrillator just in case we needed to use it. Another woman comes over. She was a nurse. She started helping her. But the woman's friend, as the woman was unconscious, was trying to pour water in the woman's mouth. And the nurse was like, don't do that. When someone is unresponsive, you don't try to pour water. But she kept on trying to do it. And then one of the guys, while we're all staying there trying to help, he's like, I don't think they speak English. And so then we said, what language do you speak? And she said, Russian. So we're all like, oh, great. The language that none of us speaks, I mean, for the most part, we all speak Spanish and French, Italian enough, So then I started thinking, who do I know who speaks Russian? Well, I have a friend who lives in Russia that I met through the architecture world. And I'm not joking, Keith. I used my Facebook Messenger and called her. She immediately answered and started to help translate for this woman, from Facebook Messenger. And I was like, so I share that story. And then ultimately the woman was fine. In fact, the EMT came and she spoke Russian, if you can believe it, the woman from the ambulance. So, but that's what New York is all about. New York is about people rushing to their aid, no matter what, no matter who. And then just that quick thinking, and then having friends, wonderful friends throughout the world to kind of call upon. That's what we're about. So hopefully I can impart that story and that truth.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. And in fact, for all the criticism that social media and so on takes, that just shows how it can be used to great benefit.
That's right. That's right. Who would have thought? Like, what are the chances that she would be there to be able to pick up right away? And it's just, I think that we should all kind of realize the goodness in all of us and not always looking for the less than good. I don't like using the word evil.
Well, that's with you on this program. You see, we're the sweet and sour, because I'm old Mr. Gloom and Doom, and you are so positive and so bubbly and so confident about everything. I think we managed to get a sort of intermediate picture about everything.
That's right.
Now, it now will be nudging 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And if you were going to go directly out of your house and you were going to have breakfast in a little restaurant, what would you have?
Oh, my favorite breakfast is huevos rancheros. Have you ever had that?
Huevo Franchera?
Huevos rancheros. It's eggs on a tortilla with avocado and salsa.
Ooh.
It's really good. But I will not be having that this morning. I'll be having a yogurt and getting into my car, going to one of the campuses at the university. Today, I have a lot of meetings out there.
So we're not doing you a total disservice by getting you up this early.
No, I think I'm just gonna go get going, actually, which I guess I don't know if that's good or bad. But
Well, I'm very lucky because the staff here at the hotel is quite small, but they really do. They look after us extremely well. So when I first get in at 6:30 in the morning, there's always a coffee ready for me, and when I've finished, which is nudging lunchtime, there's always a glass of wine waiting for me, and I have 3 lovely ladies, all of whom are very kind and very sweet and very. They've always got a smile on their face, and they've always got a nice word. And I said to somebody the other day, that getting used to coming into a hotel rather than to a studio is turning out to have great benefits, because that I look forward to coming in. Whereas when I went into the studio, there was just me. And I can barely bear my own company, let alone stare at walls. So it really is the way that we actually greeted in our first experience of the day. I think sets us up to see how things go.
Absolutely.
Now we can see a building of some sort or something rather nice behind you. What's that?
Well, it's San Marco in Venice, which I'm hoping to go to again soon. But next time on Monday, I'll have New York City behind me. So I'll have a New York City building. So.
Okay, well, it's 9:57. I'm going to let you go.
Okay, thank you.
It's been a wonderful hour, and thank you for agreeing. I've got a little sting that says I will send you a copy of it, which says Break an Egg with Keith Hayes and Suzanne Mucho.
All right. Yeah, it's been great to hang out with you, Keith, and all of your friends and at White Hart, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, we'll look forward to it.
Okay.
And in the meantime, you are staying in New York.
I am staying in New York. I'm going to Chicago in about 2 weeks. I'm going to a conference in Chicago, so I can tell you all about Chicago.
Absolutely. I actually missed an opportunity to go to Chicago. I sat in the airport there because I was going to Decatur, Illinois. And I had to catch a small commuter aircraft, and it kept on filling up, and they kept on auctioning the seats. So I couldn't actually take off and go into Chicago in case I missed my place in the queue and didn't get on the airplane. But I must say that Decatur, Illinois, was an eye-opener, because if you want to see a small, country town, it is very typical. But it was the home of, I think it's Archer Middleton Daniels, something like that. One of the big agricultural producers of, I think, fertilizers and that sort of thing. And I went down to interview the chap, and the series was quite interesting, because this would have been about 1999, and it was called Beyond 2000. And we were speculating what it would be like after the millennium. And all sorts of things. I mean, we did all sorts of things, but that's how I ended up in Decatur, Illinois.
Well, I don't know. It sounds like a blast. I've had more fun in Chicago than that, though. So it's a great city. It's a great city, and really beautiful artwork, a great public art program. I love their outdoor sculptures. I mean, it's a great city.
Well, the other one that I think I've challenged you with this before is in Portland, in Maine. And it also, small though it is, has a great deal of art, public art. But can you tell me, whereas most people have either a general or a hero or something as the main statue in the main square, what do they have in Portland?
Oh, I don't know. A lobster?
Oh, you're not far off. A lobster fisherman.
Oh, okay. A lobster, yeah. Oh, there's a great book. There's a great book called The Lobster Chronicles. Have you ever read that book? I mean,
right.
Oh my! It's written by the woman who. Do you know the movie The Perfect Storm? The book The Perfect Storm.
Yes.
And you know the woman, the female captain who was friends with him. She ended up going back to her hometown in Maine and becoming a lobster monger, with her family. It is the funniest book about going back to your hometown that has, like, I don't know, 100 people living there, and about everyone knows everything. I mean, it's really adorable. So I recommend it. But yeah, I mean,
what's it called? The Lobster?
The Lobster Chronicles.
Right. I shall keep my eye open for that.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Suzanne, thank you. Have a very nice day.
You too.
I mean, you are very, very active, but then you're but half my age. So whereas I'm hobbling, you're dashing from pillar to post. So keep that up. Bring your vitality each week to us. And if anything major occurs that you feel, gosh, I really should let them know, please don't hesitate just to get in touch with us.
Okay. All right. That sounds terrific. So great to see you. So great to be with you. Thank you.
Oh, lovely, Suzanne.
All right. Take care.
Great
Bye.
member of our team.
Okay. Take care.
Bye. Well, Suzanne Mouchot in New York, a lovely lady and a great student of life. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We normally would not. Hang on, we've got a comment from Terry. That was brilliant. Well done. I think that may be Terry, who sometimes puts us in touch with different mayors in the United States and with various charities. But certainly it was very nice to have Suzanne. She is a lovely, lovely lady. And I'm glad that she's part of the team. And on Friday, we are going to have Melissa Conti join us in the same vein and give us a different view of what's going on in the Americas. Melissa is special to Mirador Television because she has been with us through the development part of this operation. Terry says, yes, that's me. Oh, well done, Terry. Good. Delighted that you popped in, and I'm glad that you enjoyed Suzanne. And Melissa was a former colleague. The two of us worked on PBS in the past on a coast-to-coast program in the United States, a business program. I was the London anchor. She was the New York anchor. And we stayed friends. And over the years, we have developed little bits and pieces of television. And I'm happy to say that she is still with us. And she was here in, I think it was around January or February. And her son, Connor, was shown around the brewery here, Harvey's Brewery, by Miles Jenner, who is the master brewer himself. And Connor made copious notes and is now trying to replicate in a New York apartment the bitter beer that Miles Jenner produces at Harvey's Brewery. And he wants to have this sent over here so that I can take it down to Miles Jenner and say, here, this is made to your recipe by a young man that you showed around. What do you think? But so far, the only thing that he's managed to do is to have the bottles explode. So to get a satisfactory beer from the United States in the image of Harvey's is so far proves elusive. But that's Melissa, and she will join us on Friday. Jane Watkins will join us each Thursday, and she is in. I was going to say battle, but she is actually in the battle of Hastings. She's actually in Hastings, and will give us some views of what's happening down there, because we don't want to be Lewis-centric, while a lot of what we do, because we're here, will we actually want to try to reflect what we do here into other parts of the world, and what other parts of the world are doing, particularly if they've got some sort of relationship with us here, so that we can make interesting comments, know our own town, but know where it sits in the great spectrum of the world, particularly the English-speaking world, but not necessarily and not exclusively so. Let's see. As Terry says, Melissa is a lovely, intelligent, and kind lady. I'm looking forward to watching her on your program. It's very good. Delighted that you're with us this morning, Terry. And Terry herself is no mean broadcaster. In fact, when I think about it, we really should try and get her back, because she does some very, very interesting stories locally, and certainly she gets interesting organizations in the United States. Even though she's based in this area, she comes up and sort of says, Keith, would you mind sitting and being interviewed by 30, if I can say, mentally challenged people? And it's the most delightful experience, wonderful experience. And somewhere, perhaps we'll dig out the archive of that and show a bit of it, because it was really great. Or Terry, if you're still watching, perhaps what you can do is you can fix up that we actually go and do it again. We've got lovely activity here. That's terrific. That's what it's all about. Is we are at the heart of what's happening. Okay. Let me see if I can, because my mouth is terribly dry, and what I want to do is see if I can find something that that we can show. Now, yes, I talked about our history here, and one of the things that is really incumbent upon us is to let you all know, because we've got a moving population in Lewes now. But not only that, but people outside Lewes, the people who find us and like watching us, is let you know about this area. And when we first started Mirador, we created what is now our logo. We created a semi-real person called Sir Genry. Sir Genry is the helmet of a medieval knight, which stands proudly as a sculpture in one of our parks here, the Priory Park. And it is based where the Battle of Lewes took place. We actually gave him a bit of a character and got him to emulate some of the things that happened. He had a colleague called Edward Stick, who is a 1930s, 1940s colonel type character, and they look at things in a different way. Here is Genry, and one of the very first things that we did with him is I Am Genry.
You're right there.
Yes, great.
Genry is the name given by Mirador Television to a statue which stands in Priory Park in Lewes. The statue commemorates the Battle of Lewes in 1264. The battle is widely regarded as the beginning of English democracy. King Henry III had angered the nobles of the country by his willful spending and authoritarian behaviour. A group of barons led by Henry's brother-in-law Simon de Montfort went to war with the king, triumphed and forced the king to sign an agreement permitting a council of nobles. The treaty was said to have been signed at the spot in the priory where Genry now stands. A Cluniac priory from France, building was begun in 1079 by the first Lord of Lewes, William de Warenne, and his wife Gundrada. It was torn down in 1537 by Henry VIII at the dissolution of the monasteries. Genry was 20 years of age when he fought at the Battle of Lewes. His father was a courageous knight and was determined his son should follow in his footsteps. At the age of 4, Genry was sent to the Leicester Manor of de Montfort and served the family as page, squire and a knight, demonstrating exceptional ability in warfare and great courage in serving his master. Simon de Montfort died in combat the year after the Battle of Lewes, but Genry continued to be allied to the family, eventually gaining his own lands in Sussex. He fought valiantly in many campaigns and was a knight of great fame during the 13th century. The skirmish at the Priory left a deep mark on him, though, and he eventually retired to Lewes, where he lived out his days. He had no children, so his lands were distributed among other nobles in the 14th century, and his name was all but forgotten. That is until 1964, when Genry was reinstated. He now stands guarding the ruins of the Priory day in and day out. He stares fixedly ahead, neither turning to the left nor to the right. A truly disciplined medieval knight. But sometime at the turn of this century he magically came alive during the night and roamed the Priory grounds and those of Southover Manor, which was built with bricks from the Priory. People who see him think he's a ghost of a monk. He fell asleep one night and before he could return to his sentry duty was seen by Edward Stick Esquire. Edward is a walking stick owned by Mirador's executive producer. The two struck up a friendship and Genry regaled Stick with so many stories of medieval times in Lewes, and even before, Stick implored Mirador to give Genry a job. Genry and Stick now have their own show on Mirador and tell the story of the Lewes area from the time of the Romans to the time the Priory was torn down. I am Genry. He is indeed Genry. Sir Genry and Edward Stick Esquire. MiradorTelevision.com.
Well, there we go. That was Sir Genry. And the history of the Priory is a fascinating one. It has probably everything that any historical building would want. And although it is the inside walls that are left today, they are sturdy. And when you consider that they were built in we say 1079, but the building was started around about 1069, not long after the Battle of Hastings in the Norman Conquest, and the architecture is such that you can rattle that foundation, and it is now 1,000 years on, as strong and as sturdy as it was when it was built in 1079 or 1069. So we will bring you the adventures of Sir Genry Southover, and also Edward Stick Esquire. Because Edward looks at the distaff side, that the sort of thing that was happening in the 1930s, 1940s, as compared to what was happening in the the 1090s and the turn of the century to 1100. So that's upcoming in the next little while. What else are we going to provide for you? Well, there will be 2 or 3 mini series, if you like. One is the Lewis Consul, and is it possible for me to find the Lewis Consul? I don't know. Let me take a look. But I think it might be just a bit too optimistic to think that we would find just exactly what we're looking for right now. But the whole idea of Mirador is to reflect to the world what a small English town is all about. But that, in fact, what people are worried about in New York, in Sydney, Australia, in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Moscow, for that matter, is that people's fears and worries are very similar. And the way that they actually look at solving some of these worries is very similar. And that's what we're all about. We had a program called Scene in Sussex, and I got several of them episodes here. I haven't a clue what's on them, and if in fact it repeats various stuff, please forgive us. But we think that they're worth looking at again.
Why not? We deserve it.
Morning.
Good morning.
Have a pleasant stay.
Oh, he comes in and uses our bars with program.
Well, we just had our colleague from New York on, and I don't know if you can hear me. That's the way we used to do the weather.
Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way. Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
Oh, good morning, and my usual rant. Just let me remind you that this day, Thursday, and also tomorrow, people are collecting or using coffee mornings for Macmillan, the well-known cancer charity, and if you can support that, I would urge you to. My own wife, my late wife, had breast cancer and managed to beat it with the help of Macmillan. So I'm very keen on this charity, and tomorrow, Friday, we'll actually be broadcasting from Lewis Station, where the station staff, along with my favourite runaway bistro cafe, will be raising money for Macmillan. So don't often make appeals like this on this programme, but this one is special, and I hope you'll join us tomorrow when we try to have a bit of fun down at the station supporting Macmillan for the morning. I escaped jail yesterday. Give credit where credit is due. Lewis District Council, with whom I've got the argument, responded when I attended court. I never actually did get into the magistrates' court at all. They withdrew the summons before that happened, and for once I had a decent sort of chap to talk to who listened to what I had to say. Customer First, I don't know whether he's part of Customer First, but Customer First, when they just use email and so on, don't have a clue. Not a clue. So I'm not being very forgiving for them for that. But yesterday they had a chap who was willing to listen to the case, decided that it could be resolved, and is trying hard to resolve it. And between us, let's see if we can come to some conclusion. But at least I was quite impressed with what LDC did yesterday in that particular instance. To get some PR help now might be okay. Incidentally, one of the strange things I find is everybody wants a password nowadays. We're absolutely paranoid about passwords, and I can't remember them all, and I don't really feel like going through the process of keep on starting a new one for everything I look at. But you go to Lewis District Council's website, and it tells you, here are some press releases, and here's what we're doing, and so on and so forth. And you press on the piece that you're interested in reading, and you have to go and fill in, get a password and all the rest of it. Well, we're past that, I think. I'm 78, and even I realise that most people nowadays just want to tap and be done with it. Yeah, some people are doing the finger thing, and some people are paying for their coffee with their phone and so on. I haven't got quite that far, but nonetheless, one tap and that should be it. And somehow, somewhere, one of the brains that gets behind all these things, even if they're security conscious, have got to do away with this password for absolutely everything. I do understand, I think, that there is a way of getting one password for everything that you do, but I suppose that's slightly dangerous. But the other thing is, I don't quite understand how to do it, and until somebody explains, then I urge, let's do something about not having passwords for absolutely everything that we do. We're having passwords to breathe next. I'm just keeping an eye here because I try hard to keep to 5 minutes for this particular rant. So my rant is that I'm not in jail, that I'm discussing things with the council at long last. Mind you, I asked them last July, if we could get together and have a chat. That fell on deaf ears. The top brass aren't that interested in talking to people like me. Oh my goodness me, no. But nonetheless, we seem to be getting somewhere with a resolution, and that's a result, I suppose. All right, so tomorrow I shall see you down at the station. The trains aren't really getting any better. Mine was late 15 minutes getting into Victoria the other morning. When was that? Yesterday, the day before. There's a bit of chaos in the evening, and nobody knew which platform for a little while that the train was going to come in on, and then when it did, it was jam-packed within seconds. The train that I used to take at 8:45 in the morning, which was a lovely train, used to be an 8-coacher, sometimes a 12-coacher. Sometimes it was a 4 and an 8, and it joined up in Lewis. Now it's just 4 coaches, and of course you're fighting for a seat, and that's the sort of thing that the train companies now need to look at. Is if they haven't got enough coaches or trains or whatever, don't put them on the schedule, but it's just making life miserable, and they're getting the flack for it. Okay, short rant this morning, and there we are. I'm a free man. Woo! And I'd worn my Russian hat just in case I got thrown into the gulag, but we'll see you tomorrow, and at the moment the weather is looking pretty good, so perhaps we'll have a fine weekend, at least one where the heat will work up a thirst. Till then, toodle-pip.
Oh, there we are. That's the way we used to present things, and hopefully we'll get back to some of those features, which I think are quite good as we start to rebuild. For the moment, we are developing our broadcast team. We have me for a couple of times a week. Suzanne Mouchot, you met this morning, delightful lady. Tomorrow, we shall have. I hope, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying so. I've asked Mick Symes if he'll come and join me, because Mick knows what's going on in the community. He can let us know firsthand the things that we should be aware of, and all in all, he's a very nice man, and certainly a hard worker for the community, and as proved during the Jubilee. He's a very amusing broadcaster. So I hope that on a Tuesday, Mick Symes will join me. On Wednesday, we have Max Hurd, our young apprentice, who is proving to really be a good chap and starting to understand what it's all about, along with Stuart Dolby. They are the Thursday group, and they will actually do the energy matters issues during their stint. And incidentally, tomorrow I also hope that we shall start to do a form of liquid poetry, our series on wine, and I hope that Fergus Wood will be with us and can give us the expert commentary which that topic demands. Thursday, as I said, is Jane Watkins from Hastings, and on Friday, Melissa Conti. So we've got a nice team, international team, which I hope that will reflect what's going on in the community and some of the things which we think are important. For the moment, I'm just going to run through the Financial Times, the headlines as we see them in the newspapers today. The Financial Times is the Tories attack Johnson over a bid to rip up the Northern Ireland trade deal. I commented before, for some reason, we all get on the back of our politicians. We get on their back and we say, oh, why did you do this, or why didn't you do that? And generally speaking, we chase them for their lethargy. Now we've got a prime minister who seems to do things, rightly or wrongly, and he can't move without criticism being thrown at him. That trade deal is not good. It is not good for the EU, it's not good for us, and it is not good for the people of Northern Ireland, and for that matter, not particularly good for the people of Southern Ireland. Oh, but rip it up. Oh, dear. You might as well say that you're about to burn down the Canterbury Cathedral for uproar. Oh, dear. Can't do that. Can't do this. I think anything is worth while taking a look, and that's what we should be doing instead of all this condemnation. It's not Tory, right? For God's sake, the real problems are out in the street, not in that little bubble that you sit in Westminster. And it's unconscionable that you would keep this infighting going when, in fact, what we need is action on the ground. Action on the ground. And we're not getting it from you. So Boris starts to do something. He may bugger it up. He has a pretty good track record of that. But at least he tries to do something. He tries to bring something that we can all debate in a sensible fashion. and hope we can get going to try and alleviate some of the worst things of our community. The Guardian: overriding Northern Irish deals will damage UK investment, warns the CBI. Well, I give a toss for CBI. It is taken so many different strange viewpoints, and to represent a business, Confederation of Business, Confederation of British Industry, business and industry. Is sometimes you wonder where on earth or what they think business and industry is. And that's the Guardian. The Daily Telegraph: European judges to be stripped of protocol powers. Well, it's the same story in a different vein. Essentially, the European judges have been able to override our own, and as a consequence, some things that we've deemed good for this country have been vetoed. And the government is going to make sure that it is British judges for a British protocol, and not European judges looking at the Northern Ireland situation. Well, I mean, that's fair enough, I think. The Daily Mail: new Rwanda flight farce. Here we go. Somebody decided to have an initiative. Oh, God, you'd think that they decided to import Guantanamo Bay. Will this work? Who knows? But surely it's worthwhile giving it a chance, because otherwise there is going to be a popular explosion. And I can see pitchforks and nonsense on the beaches in the southern part of the country, guarding against anybody who gets anywhere near in a rubber boat. So surely it is worthwhile making sure that we examine everything carefully and come up with sensible conclusions, not just shooting from the hip. Mirror: 1 million kids to go hungry. I think that the Mirror is using poetic license, or twisting its the data that it uses. I hope it is, because I can't believe that 1 million kids are to go hungry. Is that possible? Well, it may be, I suppose, possible. We are like 56 million people in this country, nudging 60, I think, now. And there are children that escape under the radar. But we do have a social services system that looks after youngsters. So 1 million kids to go hungry. I don't quite believe it, but if it is, let's get down and ready to do things as we should. The Times: universities facing a new China cash crackdown. Essentially, there is a big worry now that because universities, we all see them as young men and women in a black gown and a motorboard, cycling purposefully around Oxford or Cambridge or whatever. But there is much more that goes on at universities. Big issues and big designs are looked after and developed. And the Times is reflecting what is beginning to worry the British government, and that is that a lot of the endowments are from China. And as a consequence, they obviously benefit from the research. So in other words, they don't have to send spies. We are saying to them, here it is on a plate. And the Times poses the question, is that right and proper? And can we afford that? And in talking to Suzanne Mouchot, the similar situation exists in the States in some universities, not in all. And that's true here of not all. All right, the Metro, the death of our hero, and that outlines the family of the Jordan Gately, 24-year-old, who was killed in Lithuania we're not. So I'm just making sure that. Well, the death of our hero. It's, we will, of course, have out of the various things that are happening personal stories. And in this case, in the, let's see, which newspaper is in? The Metro, the London paper. It explains who this man was. And that we are paying tribute to him, a hero, a war hero. He fought in Ukraine and was killed. The Daily Express: nothing off table to crush strike action. There's nothing off the table to crush strike action. Of course, the government is faced now not only with the rail strike, but also we suspect is a summer of discontent. Bits and pieces are surfacing where from social workers to train workers to bits and piecey workers, all ready to jump on the bandwagon and claim that they need more money, and undoubtedly they do. But is it the right time to give it to them? So that is an issue that is discussed in the Daily Express. The Sun: Charles blocks Andy return. It is reported that the chief, the eldest son of the Queen is appearing in public on Monday's Order of the Garter ceremony. Well, he wanted to appear at the Order of the Garter ceremony. Prince Andrew, having been discredited because of his.
What did you do last night, then? Where did you go?
Just right there, yeah. You was.
Because of.
Got me one with it.
Hang on. I'm hearing a nice conversation here. What did you do last night? I don't think they can hear me. What did you do last night?
Lost my credit card. It's been
Perhaps they don't want to tell me. Right. Anyway, I thought that it was worth an ask because the bar has sprung to life with some guests from the hotel, and they are having a little giggle with Shannon, the lovely Shannon, who looks after it. And I see a beer being poured, and at this hour of the morning, perhaps that's not such a bad thing to have poured. All right, but Prince Andrew wants to return now to public life. He wants to get back all the things, his titles, which were stripped from him by the Queen, and we hope that he would come back into being seen in public. And apparently Charles has said, over my dead body. So we've got a right royal wingding between siblings in the royal family, and all to do with what Andrew can and cannot do. Incidentally, it is 10:52. We're expecting a high of 19 degrees today with a gentle breeze, no rain. So you're okay there. And it is the 13th day of June on the year 2022. And a nice day it is out there. And the Daily Star is pointing out we're all going to roast to death as the week goes on, because today 19, tomorrow 21, and then 23. Yeah. What did you do last night? They don't want to tell us. It's going to get warmer and warmer and warmer as the week goes on. So be prepared for it, because it is a heat wave. And of course, as usual, a water alert forecasts a scorching UK summer. This is the Star. And in fairness, they've been consistent. While hell and damnation has been circulating around them in the weather outside, the dear old Daily Star has ignored it all and kept us up to date with the fact that we're all going to fry to death at some stage. So there we are. There's the newspapers, which is now 10:54, and I think that we probably we'll probably go through about 10:15. Let's see is whether we've got other things which we can take a look at. Well, I played the other day something which turned out to be quite popular, the Ghost Train. So let's play that again today, so that you can see that we have a ghost train near here, but also the memory of a tragic accident that happened about 200 years ago.
Many people find commuting by train tiresome. But one of the pleasures of taking a train to London is that it passes through some of the most beautiful countryside in the UK. None more so than the view of the countryside as the line approaches Clayton Tunnel, just north of Brighton. The tunnel is the longest on the line, at 1.25 miles, running under the South Downs. It's unusual because the entrance is not the usual railway brick. It is instead designed to look like the gateway to a castle. On top is a cottage built for the railway's lightkeeper in 1849. The tunnel itself was opened in 1841 and the cottage added later. Idyllic. But after 1861 it became a nightmare, or at least for those who believe in ghostly goings-on. In August of that year, a night train left Brighton, travelling north to London. Partway through the tunnel, it stopped at what it thought was a danger signal from the lightman. The engine driver was correct. The railway official had indeed given a danger signal, but the train had rushed past him before pulling up. Thinking the train had cleared the tunnel, the unfortunate lightman gave the all clear to a following train. And it slammed into the back of the first train in the dark, killing 23 and injuring 176 more. It was the worst ever accident on the line. And people walking on the downs over the underground passage have reported hearing the screams of the passengers as the trains piled into each other. The line is now also a direct line from Lewes. I've travelled through that tunnel 1,000 times. I've never heard a scream other than the screech of the wheels and brakes. But I've never walked over the downs at that point either. And I turned down an invitation to stay in the cottage overnight. In fact, I get tense each time I go into the tunnel, knowing what had happened more than 165 years ago. But my fellow passengers carry on reading their newspapers, obviously oblivious to both the tragedy and the ghosts. I could sometimes scream at them. The ghosts of Clayton Tunnel. Eerie. Bloody eerie.
Well, let's say hello to, we're getting quite a few viewers in the United States this morning. I'm delighted since we had Suzanne Mouchot on, a lovely lady. But hello, Joy, who has just emailed me to say, I'm watching the program. And God bless her, I believe she's in Bowling Green, of all places, in Kentucky. I've always wanted, my great ambition has been always to be a Kentucky colonel. It's an honorary position. It has no weight anymore, except you get a scroll to say that you're a Kentucky colonel, and you are allowed free entry to the Kentucky Derby. So one of my ambitions for my relationship with Kentucky. Right, okay. Now, there was something there that I thought we might take a look at. Before we dance away this morning, and I'm not absolutely sure that I can remember exactly what it was, but Let's see if I can catch up on it. Oh, I know. It's program 9, Old Pubs. Now, I've played this Old Pubs thing over the last couple of weeks because I have a great fear that pubs are dying. And the history of the pubs is terribly, terribly important for us. So I think this is in cooperation with the British Council, our account of how the English pub developed. And I hope that it will keep us on the straight and narrow so that we develop them even more in a traditional manner and not let most of them slip into become restaurants, and not very good restaurants at that. Let's have a look.
You'd think the old man would give up pubs for Lent or something, wouldn't you? Well, think on. He even gets absorbed in how the pubs were in January's time. Luddite.
Flanked by the church, the rectory, and the people's homes, stands the inn. In its shade and beneath its roof, men of all degrees and of all opinions meet in comradeship and comfort. Walk through any English market town and you'll find the inn at the center of its life. On market day, the people from the country around meet there to discuss the trend of prices, their children's health, and their home affairs. It's the same in the villages. When the sun warms the earth, they sit outside and watch the world go by. At the English inn today, there is a hospitality that by the host is just as much a sacred charge as it was to the monks and nuns of the Middle Ages, who first gave bread and ale to travellers. Often the only sanctuary in out-of-the-way parts, the monasteries had a lodge open to pilgrims and other wayfarers. Later, these lodges became separate establishments and were eventually run as inns, under such signs as the Pilgrim's Inn. One example of monastic origin is the Bull, which gets its name from the papal bull, or bill, not the animal. These inns of England have seen history happen in their yards. Pilgrims and warriors have trodden their stairways. Here, medieval knights refreshed themselves on their journeys to the Crusades to fight under the banner of St. George. The inns have preserved much of England's architecture. The early inn has preserved some of the finest carvings and treasures.
Where's your hot day?
Like the church, it was the sanctuary. Hence, most of these carvings have a religious meaning.
say this for the old man. He does stay on message. When he goes into a pub, at the end of each episode of our documentary, The Bloody Past, he says he's going for a pint. But he doesn't. He polishes off a Bloody Mary. Now that's keeping with the theme, all right. Another 15 minutes of quirky television. Some people get fed up with quirk, but not my lot. We thrive on it. So get ready for more quirky stories on Mirador Television. We just can't help it. Stephen Catlin knows Lewis the best, and he's mayor-elect for Lewis. But he does have a softer side when it comes to keeping Lewis beautiful.
Hello, a sunny day for a change, and I'm down at All Saints in Lewes. It was originally known as All Hallows, and there has been a church on this site since 12th century. The tower is the oldest part, but it's not the inside we've come to look at today. We're having a look around the churchyard at what are known as box tombs. Now, these are unusual for Lewes. Box tombs were in use and in favour when there were grave robbers about. And this is one such tomb. We're going a bit further into the churchyard to see another. Now, the reason it's unusual for Lewes to have box tombs is because there is no medical school here, and there was no medical school here. At the time of Burke and Hare, the great grave robbers, they supplied cadavers to medical schools. So there had to be a way of concealing the bodies and making them difficult to get. And I think, let me just turn the camera around so you may be able to see a bit more. This is a box tomb, and you can, if I crouch down on the floor, see entrance to the vault, because the bodies are not in the box on top. They are down steps inside. So the gravedigger had to know where to gain entry. There, basking in the sunlight, is the Baxter Memorial. All the memorials in this now closed churchyard were erected at a time when one bought a plot of land in perpetuity. That doesn't happen now, and town centre burial grounds are definitely not allowed. But these days it is more common for a plot to be sold for 20 years or 30 years. At the time this churchyard was established, memorials were erected and plots were sold in perpetuity. So we have some pretty old ones here. Sadly, the weather has taken its toll on most of them. It's just caught my eye down by this plot here. There, among the heather, feeding, is a bumblebee. And I am so pleased to see that my attempts to create a wildlife haven around this churchyard are actually coming to fruition. There's bits of planting all over the place, and some due to come to fruition later in the year. But on this mound here, which actually covers loads of old bits of stone no one knew quite what to do with, you will see that there is quite a nice selection of spring flowers, including at the back there some hellebores and a hyacinth. It's really quite jolly. But what has brought me to this end of the churchyard is this, a vault still in use. The remains interred within are still cared for by the descendants of those buried here. The most prominent one being the man who bought Rodin's Kiss. He bought it for himself, and it was exhibited in Lewes a few years ago, but unusually, this vault is still in use. The descendants of the first man who owned Lewes House and the next man in line, his successor in title, are within here. It's quite fascinating. It's also quite peaceful to be here. There are some quite old memorials going back to the 18th century. Probably underneath those are remains from even earlier. But it's just a place of quiet and tranquility. And you will see these box tombs crop up everywhere in this churchyard. One here. Some of them have sadly fallen into slight disrepair, and although the district council is supposed to take good care of them and has got a mason involved, it does look in parts as though the inhabitants are trying to get out. This is the memorial to William Farnes, F-A-R-N-E-S, who died on the 10th of November 1876. And there is another one here. Henry Blackman died 1832. You will see in the ground there is evidence of railings having been erected around these box tombs. They went in the Second World War. I think people were told that the railings would be used to build Spitfires. Of course, they wouldn't have left the ground if they were. But it was a great thing to encourage people to participate in the war effort. Another tomb here, 1834. And then these simpler ones are perhaps earlier, well sunk into the ground, with the writing all but obliterated. And one here. But there we are. And a last look at the one vault still in use. That is the story behind the box tombs. Not to show great wealth, although they will have cost a lot, but to prevent grave robbers getting at the remains within. This is All Saints Church in Friars Walk, Lewes, originally All Hallows. Thank you.
Well, some fascinating stuff coming out this morning, and I hope that you're finding it of interest. And those of you who are new to Lewes, realizing the town in which you are now a resident, and those of you who have lived here for a long time, but not kept up totally with everything that around you, is the interesting stuff that is our heritage, is our history. So it is 11:22, and I think that it is time for us to say toodle pip. We've had a very, very good morning. We've looked at the papers, as we normally do. We've had my co-host from New York, Suzanne Mouchot, and lovely, lovely lady that she is, and giving a reflection of what's happening in the States. And also a reflection of life in the States. and I'm happy to say that our life here will be featured also in the other direction. So there we are. Good. We've got great activity going on this morning. Shannon has got everybody organised and chasing around and having a beer, because it is now 11:23 and time for us to say, I think, goodbye. I think that what we need to do is to just look at the things that we. Let's just go down to Grange Park for one last time, and that should take us to about time for us to say goodbye. Okay, that's it for this morning. You've been watching Mirador Television out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewes in East Sussex. A good morning, apart from Suzanne Mougeot. We've looked back. We've had a visit in the archive sense from Annie Verrill, one of this town's great successes as a broadcaster. We've had a look at the history. We've seen who Jenry was and the Battle of Lewes. And there are 1,001 things for us to show you over the next few weeks. So let me say toodle pip. Toodle pip, I should say, yes. And one way or another, I think we should be able to say a toodle pip properly. Here we go. From Lewes in East Sussex on the 13th day of June 2022 at 11:26 is cheerio.